Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. So, the BC election irregularity situation in the riding of Surrey-Guilford has gone absolutely crazy. I didn't expect the Conservatives to actually jump on board this one as much as they have, because it's one of those issues that's very coded in a way where the media will make you seem like you're a conspiracy theorist or just a bad person for questioning the results of the election. The Conservatives are going about this in a very intelligent way where they are finding evidence and presenting evidence and basically saying, hey, are the BC NDP going to investigate this? And the BC NDP, despite the fact that they were the ones in November, David Eby specifically, saying there should be an inquiry into election irregularities and bad procedures, suddenly this is all a bunch of conspiracy nonsense and denialism or whatever. Here's a video that Brian Tepper posted from the CTV news coverage of this, and you can even tell from the MSN coverage, there's a lot to this. If they had a kill shot angle on the Conservatives being out over their skis, they'd take it. And both the media and the BCNDP are not taking it right now. Here's the video that Brian Tepper shared.
The Conservatives have gathered sworn affidavits, including from residents of Argyll Lodge, suggesting they didn't request mail-in ballots and were coerced. One statement noting, I marked the ballot where they pointed it, and I was led to believe that I had no choice but to mark the ballot. Otherwise, I feared that I would be kicked out of the House. The Conservatives have gathered sworn affidavits.
No, what's really disgusting about people feeling intimidated at this Argyll Lodge, literally across the street from a polling station in Surrey-Guilford, is that this is a housing situation for people with slight mental limitations. Like, they might be able to hold down jobs and whatnot, but best for them to be able to live around other people. And so the manager of this housing project was supposedly intimidating people into letting her be able to request ballots for them and then getting them to fill them out. And in some cases, a ballot was just filled out for them because there were 21 residents of this housing project. There were 21 ballots requested and there were 21 ballots sent in. That's really sketchy, especially because these people are able-bodied and able to go and vote for themselves if they wanted to. And these affidavits even said that many of them didn't even know an election was going on. But again, the idea that people would be fearing that they'd be kicked out is pretty insane, considering that it's not like these individuals can go and easily find housing themselves. It would be quite difficult for them. But it's not just individual Conservative MLAs sharing content about this. The BC Conservative Caucus is actually sharing stuff about this case, and they're doing a really good job presenting it. There is no half measures being taken on investigating these election irregularities. To be clear, the person who is suing right now to have the election basically overturned and then have a by-election held is Hanvir Randawa, the candidate for Surrey-Guilford for the Conservatives, who is the competitor to Gary Begg, the BC NDP current MLA, but maybe he won't be the MLA in a month. You never know. But he's the one taking them to court, but the BC Conservatives are specifically wanting a legislative inquiry by an independent investigator. The BC NDP previously wanted to just make an MLA, one of their own MLAs, in charge of looking up irregularities, but that is obviously not super kosher. But the BC Conservatives say here, David Eby won Surrey-Guilford by 22 votes, giving him a one-seat majority. We've uncovered some serious inconsistencies about the vote in this riding. The RCMP need to figure out what is happening at Argyll Lodge, because there are a lot of fingers being pointed back and forth right now between the person who runs the lodge, the manager of the lodge, who I have seen evidence has literally donated a maxed out donation to the BC NDP last year, 2023. And now BC Elections is saying, we didn't just dump off the ballots, you requested them. She's saying, I didn't request them, they just sent them to us. It's a mess.
The NDP candidate, Gary Begg, has won the riding of Surrey-Guilford. He's won it, though, by 22 votes. It is still a win, though, no matter how narrow that majority might be. That will give the NDP what they need for a majority government.
21 residents of a mental health and addiction recovery home, Argyll Lodge, cast mail-in ballots despite living across the street from a voting station. A third party told residents how to complete their mail-in ballot packages, including who to vote for. In the statement, the resident alleges they were rushed into marking the ballot. I do not know who I have voted for, the statement reads. I marked the ballot where they pointed it, and I was led to believe I had no choice but to mark the ballot, otherwise I feared I would be kicked out of the home.
The BC Conservative Party also noting the manager of Argyll Lodge's apparent $1,400 donation to the BC NDP in 2023.
This is the same way our clients have been casting their votes for over the last 30-some years.
NDP donor and facility manager Baljeet Kandola told the Vancouver Sun, every time there's an election, the commission, they contact us, and they've always delivered their ballots here. Elections BC disputed Kendola's statement that mail-in ballots just appear at the lodge, stating voters must individually request ballot packages.
I'm Steve Cooner, Conservative MLA for Richmond-Queensborough and official opposition critic for the Attorney General's Department. Look, this doesn't add up. Election BC doesn't deliver ballots to addictions and recovery facilities. Voters must individually request ballot packages. It's time for the RCMP to get to the bottom of this. We must protect our democracy. We must protect our votes. Justice must be served.
Now, I just wanted to let that entire thing play just so you get a full context for what's going on. But yeah, it is now just this ridiculous situation where the manager is saying, well, we've been doing this for the last 30 years. I'm not even sure if there were very accessible ways of mail-in voting 30 years ago, but I'm not sure if that makes it better that you've potentially been committing voter fraud for 3 decades and nobody noticed. And she even tried to come out, Baljeet Kandola, and say, well, I'm not an NDP partisan, when not only do they have a record of her donating to the BC NDP that seems pretty firm that that was her, could always be someone with the exact same name. I don't really think so in this situation. Maxing out a donation to the BC NDP, probably because the House gets funding from the government. And then she also had supposedly donated like $500, close to $500, to Jagmeet Singh's 2017 leadership election fund when he was fighting Charlie Angus and Nikki Ashton for the federal NDP leadership. That's a true partisan. If you're donating to a leadership campaign, that's a very partisan thing to be doing. And also, she then, I saw in a CBC report that was done, she then claimed, well, I spoiled my own ballot. It's like, yeah, sure you did. Sure you did. You're one of the maybe 5 or a couple dozen people to have accidentally spoiled a ballot or done it on purpose. I don't believe you that you actually showed up to spoil a ballot. It sounds like that's the most convenient thing to possibly say, because if you said you were a conservative voter, everyone would think, no, you're lying because you donate to the BC NDP. And saying you donate to the BC NDP would obviously increase the suspicion that that's probably who you were getting all the lodge residents to vote for as well. But so it's just, oh, I spoiled my ballot. Oh, I spoiled my ballot. I don't even know what politics are. I just kind of send money around for fun. This is serious. This doesn't mean that the Conservatives were defrauded in tons and tons of ridings. No. It means that when a riding is this close, small-scale shenanigans that have to do with a dozen votes here, 3 votes there, 2 votes there, or in singular votes, does matter quite a bit. They say the Conservatives have 45 voter irregularities in this riding, 21 from Argyll Lodge, and then the remaining ones are people who are voting in Surrey-Guilford who either don't have addresses that match up where they currently live, and they might live outside of the riding, and in one case, somebody who actually ended up voting twice, that their voting record had 2 votes basically registered underneath it, or literally the exact same name of the same person voted 2 different times because they happen to have a double registration at their place of residence. This matters because Gary Begg is currently the MLA for a riding that he might have not actually legitimately won. This doesn't mean that Gary Begg is involved. I really doubt that the NDP would end up coordinating with somebody like this from Argyll Lodge, but it demonstrates that partisans do have incentives to potentially cheat. Do we know full well that this is 100% cheating? Not at this point. Still needs to be investigated. Do not jump to conclusions. If you know anything that's gone on in Surrey-Guilford, or you know people who are going around trying to mass mail in ballots for other people, go and check that out. I don't think we're going to get thousands of bad votes in this riding, but I think if there's a good public inquiry, we might get up to a couple hundred of votes that are suspect. And again, It's not like, oh, it's just a couple hundred. What percentage is that in the grand scheme of things? Well, it determines who the MLA is in the grand scheme of things. And on top of that, it might determine if the government is a majority or a minority, because a minority government is going to function far less smoothly for David Eby than a majority government. And it's so telling the way that the NDP has been treating this whole situation. So you guys probably already know about David Eby calling this whole thing cringe. I want to play more of an interview that he did on the CBC that I didn't show last time. This is just telling that this is his response to this whole situation, because again, he was literally the guy in November saying that we should look into issues with the election, with ballot boxes being taken home by poll workers, ballots going missing, ballots not being counted properly. But now this is what he says now that it's serious and it could overturn a riding.
Claims.
Yeah, I mean, it's all a little bit cringe, I've got to say. If that's how he wants to spend his time, it's okay. It does have echoes of American-style politics that he's been trying to bring to our province, and I think it's unfortunate. But there's lots of safeguards. If there's anything to the allegations, Elections BC and the courts will do that review. I note, of course, that he is unwilling to put his own name to those allegations in the court.
Because Hanvir is a lawyer, and he already put his name to it. And Rusted literally did a press conference alongside Hanvir. So what's his point? He's trying to do this whole like, oh, Rusted knows he's wrong. But now he's being far more diplomatic a day after. He just called it all cringe. The next day, he's like, well, we have proper ways of investigating the stuff, and they can do that, whatnot. I thought you were calling them sore losers, and they're like Toronto Maple Leafs fans who think, oh, if only we scored 3 more goals, we'd have a Stanley Cup. He's not doing that anymore. Now he's trying to be diplomatic about it because it could end bad.
Court applications, but his candidate will bring that forward, and they'll be looked at as they should be.
Anyways, but I want to jump over to what one of his other MLAs had said about the situation. I believe it is the current Justice Minister for the BC NDP government. It is Nikki Sharma. And again, this is back on the 9th, but it demonstrates the kind of attitude the BC NDP are trying to take to the situation, trying to shame the Conservatives to not talk about it. Nikki Sharma here says, our elections are independent with safeguards to ensure they are free and fair. John Rusted is free to raise his concerns with Elections BC. That's his right. We are focused on addressing the issues facing the people of our province, like the threat of tariffs from the U.S. By the way, know how do you avoid the threat of tariffs from the U.S.? Stop letting fentanyl run free in the province. End the stupid decriminalization of drug program, because that is what Trump is able to harp on right now, because there's a lot of drugs entering the US from British Columbia and Canada in general, originating mostly out of BC. They keep shutting down drug labs that are not that far away from the border, out in rural areas and small towns of British Columbia. Seems like a big deal. We literally have 10 times more people on the terror watch list entering the US through Canada than they do from Mexico. It's actually kind of a problem. Like, I don't think that the Americans are guiltless in all of this, because a lot of illegal guns enter into Canada from the U.S. But at the same time, Eby and the NDP are the last people in Canada that should be talking about how we need to have retaliatory tariffs, which is what David Eby and his other boss Jagmeet Singh have taken the position on, when they're literally the problem. Anyways. So this is a crazy situation. It will keep developing. I'll keep bringing updates. One thing I want to remind you guys about, if you live in British Columbia, make sure you buy a membership to the BC Conservatives. The AGM for the party is in March. I want to make sure that the executive board of the party is as firmly conservative as possible. So purchase a BC Conservative membership. Do that right now if you can. And make sure you go to a delegate meeting and try and get elected as a delegate to show up to the Nanaimo AGM. Really, what you should do is buy a membership, show up to a delegate meeting. Usually you get a chance to say who you are. Each riding is going to send 10 delegates to the AGM. And I would say, because I assume you're this way, portray yourself as I'm an orthodox conservative, reform-minded conservative, an anti-SOGI conservative, anti-drug conservative, any of those things, and it'll probably be a good way of being able to portray why people should send you to the AGM. Again, it matters a lot. I don't want any united people coming from that dead party and trying to scatter over here and try and get themselves lodged in. It's a threat that happens to every party, so I want to make sure this first AGM after this big election is done well. We have good people in good places. Anyways, So that's it for me today, guys. See you later.